It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
Hey, welcome back to the Real Estate Breakfast, breaking down for you the Australian property market. So nice to get Monday out of the way. We had some tech issues yesterday. You get just one of those little bugs in the system and it takes your whole system down. It's quite a nightmare. You can probably relate if recently you've had computer problems. Tuesday today, May the 27th, oh boy, just about into June. Canberra, good morning to you. Looks like you are set to have some easing with your planning rules to allow more dual occupancies and medium density homes across residential zones. Now, with the city's population projected to hit 784,000, wait, there is a year, 2060, the government aims to fill the missing middle gap, encouraging townhouses, terraces and low-rise apartments. Proposed changes include removing block size minimums, enabling subdivisions and increasing tree canopy requirements. So that is all heading in the right direction. As we catch up with Margaret Lomas on our Tuesday morning from Destiny Solutions, who has been here, there and everywhere, tripping around. And I believe, Margaret, you went to Norway.
Yes, I did go to Norway and it was new for me. I've done a lot of travel in my lifetime, but Scandinavia was always on my bucket list. And while I would have liked to have timed it for the Northern Lights, I didn't get to do that because airfares were just great at the time that I chose them. And I always look for bargains wherever I can. But we had a great time in Norway, including going up into the northernmost town in the world, which is called Hammerfest. It has a population of 11,000 people, surprisingly. And while people do live further north than Hammerfest is the northernmost permanent population. And it was a beautiful town. It snowed while we were there, and even though it's almost summer. So you can imagine what it's like year round.
Yeah, Norway is one of those countries, quality of life, it always comes up in surveys. What was the biggest takeaway from Norway from your perspective?
Well, I think they say it's the third happiest country in the world. I guess that's probably around the environment. And interestingly enough, I also heard a survey yesterday that said that money doesn't make you happy, but it does if it buys you experiences. And I guess experiences relate to being out and about in the world and being able to kind of look around and go to wonderful places. And if you already live in a pretty wonderful place that's marked by beautiful piece of scenery after beautiful piece of scenery and fjords galore and just majestic mountains and crisp mountain air, then I guess that's going to really contribute to your sense of happiness a significant amount. The cost of living there is, I guess, comparable to probably Australia, but the wages are pretty good, unlike America where you have to go and tip everybody because wages are so bad and you've got to take on that burden. That's not the case in Scandinavia. Wages are quite good. You aren't expected to tip, so it's relaxed when you visit there. You don't have that constant stress hanging over your head. And I just think, yeah, it's definitely a wonderful place to live. And people seemed to be happy to me.
Yeah, okay, so that is definitely one of the happy places. Of course, locally, Hervey Bay is the other happy place. Now, let's talk about Canberra because that's going to be a happy place. As I mentioned in my introduction there, gee, the city's population projected to be 784,000 by 2060. Interesting because this is something that you have been talking about, these changes, you know, the middle gap encouraging townhouses, terraces and low-rise apartments.
I've been talking for years about the fact that one of the ways to very quickly tackle the problem that we have with undersupply is to immediately address planning rules. And we are seeing some states and some areas, some local councils doing that straight away. And it's making a big difference. And a great example is development that I'm doing at the moment in Adelaide, where I had a house which was on a block that's around about 850 square metres. areas. And typically in the past, there was a chance that I could divide that into two because I had a good wide access way down the side and build a second dwelling. But I really wanted to do more than that. I thought, why not be able to get it down into three? And although that particular council does have minimum land sizes, they're also quite open to you proving to them that you can create a pretty nice development by going smaller than that. And because of that, I was able to get through what is now going to be a 3-dwelling development, existing house remains. Then I add 2 to the back, and they're both 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom houses that will go into the back with plenty of side access, as long as you provided the right amount of visitor spaces and garages and that sort of thing. And I think this is what we need, because all of a sudden I'm going to be adding 2 dwellings to the undersupply that this particular area is experiencing. And if they let everybody do that, suddenly we get supply happening really quickly, rather than relying on those bigger developers to have to buy big tracts of former farmland and then undertake a massive big selling campaign on the land and get it all sold off and then get all the building happening. We can actually achieve it in these small developments at a time by loosening up on the rules all around the country. And I think there's many states and many local council areas that need to start looking at this and toss out that whole minimum land size. As long as you can create a development and a house that someone will want to live in, that has room and amenity and is good looking, I don't see why we have to stick to these bigger land sizes. Let's be honest, people don't necessarily use those big backyards anymore. Life has changed, and it's time that planning rules caught up with that.
Yeah, it's interesting talking about planning rules, because there will be people listening that'll say, well, hang on, the density is XYZ. How have you managed to actually talk around that and get an extra dwelling on the site? It is in Adelaide. They've looked at it and they've said, right, okay, we're happy with the way that looks. So there's flexibility. I think so many people just look at the numbers and say, well, that is what it is. And if they can't sort of make it work in those parameters, then they just give up.
That's right. And, it is all about being able to go for it with council. There's policy, but there's always out of policy decisions that can be made. And many of them are based on precedent. We had another development in Adelaide where we wanted to cut off a backyard and build a second dwelling. And we were told by the council that we couldn't do it because we would end up with a 5% undersized block on one of the blocks. It's 5%, which meant nothing really. We were still able to show that we had the right amount of open space that they required, which incidentally was really more than people needed in the first place. And that particular council stuck to their guns. Well, we took them to the Land and Environment Court, and it didn't even cost us anything to do that. I didn't get a lawyer. I just lodged the application for $150. And by the time the hearing came around, I think the council realised that they were unlikely to win this one because I wasn't asking for anything unreasonable, and they backed off and let us do the development. So a lot of people, as you say, will give up very quickly and just go according to the letter of the law. But I can tell you now, I've had quite a number of developments approved that go outside of planning rules, but they get approved because I'm able to demonstrate that what I'm building is not an eyesore. It's not going to be some little box that, it's unfair for people to live in, that I've got plenty of amenity and landscaping, and the entire thing is going to look good and not detract from the area. Then if you can do that, then often a council will listen to you.
That is really great advice. And in terms of a precedence, for those people that are listening going, gee, where do I go? Where do I go for that? Where do they go, Margaret, when you're looking for that information? Because it is very, very useful to support your argument.
Absolutely. And I might sound like I really know what I'm doing. And of course, I wrote a book last year called Diary of a Small Property Developer. And I wrote that with Peter Koulissos, who's known as the property professor. And he's right into all of this planning and development, and he teaches it at TAFE. So we wrote this book together and we tracked a couple of developments diligence I was doing through all the highs and lows and ups and downs and all the things that went wrong, including this particular development where we had to go to the Land and Environment Court. And we wrote the book to make it easy for people. But I didn't know anything before I started. And the thing is, you need good people on your team. And I had a really good surveyor. So when we were first knocked back on what we wanted to do, it was actually the surveyor who wrote to me and said, you know what, this isn't fair because there's plenty of precedent there where other people have actually achieved these smaller blocks and still satisfied the amenity that the council is after. You need to fight this. And he wanted to do that for me because he said it's just not right. You shouldn't have had this knocked back, really, even though it's outside of policy. So you need the right people on your team, and maybe the book might help you as well.
Navigate the world of real estate like a pro with expert insights, opinions and trends to up your game and knowledge when buying your next property.
And right now it is time for another property tip, and we were talking a couple of weeks ago with Sean there in Rockingham, and you've got something to tell the listeners when it comes to swimming pools.
Yeah, I think just a recent example of a swimming pool is a light on a swimming pool that wasn't working, but it's something that the seller hadn't turned on for years. In the pre-settlement inspection, turned it on, didn't work, and it caused issues in terms of the good working order clause. So I think pools is just something that people need to be aware of, checking for leaks, making sure they're in good order, and that the pool light works.
We dive deep into topics like buying, selling, investing, and maximising your property's value, from mortgage advice to the latest property data and trending numbers. Your real estate journey starts here.
The other thing with that is to just make sure that you surround yourself with a good team, the experts that know laws.
The two things you need is a good town planner, and then you need a good surveyor. So those two people are critical if you are going to be developing, whether or not you're within rules or outside of rules. I think one of the things that we discovered that I discovered when I was writing the book, and I wrote it as a diary. I started that diary thinking it was going to be done in a year, that my development would be finished in a year. And I did it where I'd write it every, couple of weeks, and I'd say what day we were up to. And I remember that when we got up to day 1450, I thought, well, I really went into this development like most people do, just thinking, yeah, it's going to take me 9 months to a year and I'll have a finished product. But there we were 3 years down the track without a finished product. And eventually we got it finished. But as I said, we had to overcome every barrier that you can imagine. And I couldn't have done it without, first of all, the guidance of Peter Kolizos, who co-wrote the book. I wrote all the emotion and the drama, and then he summed up every chapter with, okay, this is what you do. But my surveyor was priceless, as was the town planner, who I consulted with right at the beginning of the entire thing.
All right, well, quite a bit of information there. So that is great on our Tuesday morning. Margaret, thank you so much. Enjoy your Tuesday. And I guess, yes, welcome back, of course, after tripping around.
Thank you.
Unlock the secrets of real estate and stay informed about the latest real estate buzz with hot market trends, emerging suburbs and hidden gems.
This is from CoreLogic's latest regional market update, which is telling us that regional dwelling values rose by 1.5% in the April quarter. That is ahead of the capital city's 1% rise. I want to talk first off about Perth's property market, which is luxury is being redefined and demand is spilling into once overlooked suburbs.
Yeah, so we've seen a bit of a shift in the Perth market with really strong results in suburbs that we've never seen hit those prices before. I guess we're seeing a lot of suburb records in a lot of these areas, and it's purely based on the property itself.
We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.